2019 is officially all wrapped up. We are now on to 2020. We're on to a new decade. Do you feel old yet? I do. But with the new year being over, it's time once again for me to get into my top 10 video series, and it starts with my list for the top 10 best movies of 2019. Before I get into my list though, I gotta make some quick points. The first point, I did not see every movie that got released in 2019. There were some movies like The Lighthouse in 1917 that either flew under my radar or weren't getting a wide release near me, so I wasn't able to see them. 1917 was actually the reason I'm getting my list up to you guys now, because I was hoping if I wait a little bit long enough that I would be able to finally see it. It would get a wide release. Unfortunately, it did not. I'm still gonna have to wait till, a few weeks down the line before I can see it, so unfortunately, I wasn't able to catch that one. The other point I want to make to you guys is these will not be any spoiler reviews for any of these movies. I'm just going to mention a few points, why I loved them, why they made the list. You don't have to worry about spoilers here. That being said, if you want to see my spoiler-filled reviews for these movies, I will have the links to all of them in the description down below. If you want to check them out, you're free to do so. And the final point before I get into my list, this is my personal list for what I felt were the best movies of the year. Does that mean these were the 10 most perfect movies of the year? No. These were just my 10 favorites. These were just the movies that really hit me to my core and these reminded me why I love movies. Like, these were the embodiments to why movies are my passion, and I just love them, and so I'm going to talk about them here. Okay, I've said what needed to be said. Let's get into the list. Starting off this list at number 10, we have Shazam. I've really felt like in recent years the DCEU is beginning to find its way with the type of movies it should make, and Shazam I think is further proof of that. Zachary Levi absolutely crushed it in this movie as Shazam. He did a great job at playing a kid that's stuck in an adult body with superpowers. He and Jack Dylan Grazer had unbelievable chemistry in this movie. I love seeing Jack Dylan Grazer help teach him how to be a superhero. This movie's a ton of fun. It's hilarious. It's surprisingly very touching at times. It's a movie about family. It's a movie that touches on the lesson of with great power comes great responsibility, but it's not a Spider-Man movie. Going into this movie, I was hoping it would be Superman meets Big, and that's exactly what it was. At number 9, we have Toy Story 4. Toy Story 4, I was very excited for. I was also very skeptical over it, though, because I was thinking to myself, Toy Story 3, I feel like ended the story in the most perfect way possible. I really don't want this to be milking it. What else is there to tell in the story? Turns out there actually was still a story to be told, and Toy Story 4, I feel like it really did conclude this franchise officially. I love really seeing more of where Woody is at with a new kid. I loved seeing Bo Peep being reintroduced into the franchise. This is one of the funnier Pixar movies we've ever gotten. I think it's definitely the funniest of the Toy Story movies. The animation is beautiful. The new characters we're introduced to, they're all awesome. And the way this movie ends, it just tugs on your heartstrings. Honestly, just as much as probably the ending to Toy Story 3 did. And the way this one ends, I really feel they should stop this franchise now. No more Toy Stories. You made a perfect quadrilogy, and that's basically impossible. I can proudly say I actually saw a lot more horror movies this year than I probably ever have, and my favorite horror movie of the year at number 8 is Dr. Sleep. Making a sequel to The Shining that came out so many years ago, that's a big risk. You're thinking, alright, is Mike Flanagan biting off into more than he can chew? Nope, turns out he made a fantastic sequel to a fantastic movie. Ewan McGregor and Rebecca Ferguson both give probably the best performances I have seen from either of them. Kylie Curran gave probably the best performance by a kid actor I have seen all year. This movie had the perfect nostalgia to throw back to The Shining. I also loved seeing how it expanded more on this world. This movie is disturbing, it's suspenseful, it's definitely frightening. As someone who doesn't watch horror movies all that much, everyone around me tells me that Mike Flanagan is one of the best horror directors working today. After seeing that movie, I officially believe it. Number 7 was Martin Scorsese's return to form, and that was The Irishman. The Irishman is just what reminds you what made Martin Scorsese such a great director in the beginning. It was the mob movies. And The Irishman just does everything you could ask for in a mob movie. Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Joe Pesci, it's so great to see these all-time great actors back in a movie together. All three of them do a phenomenal job. The writing in this movie, the dialogue in this movie, it's great, it's memorable, it's the kind that just puts you on the edge of your seat. I always love when dialogue can do that, when dialogue can just give you real anxiety during a movie. The movie's really long, yeah, it's 3.5 hours long. But really, as long as this movie was, when I watched it, there wasn't a scene or a moment that I felt needed to be taken out of the movie. Everything that was in the movie felt necessary. It never felt slow, it never felt boring. I was hooked to the screen the entire time. If you can find the time to watch this movie, watch this movie. At number 6, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. As someone who's not really familiar with the 1960s, when I first saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and I walked out of it, I was just like, yeah, that was good. Then my friend and I did a little more digging into what this movie was really about, and after having like a 2-hour conversation about it, I thought, yeah, this movie's awesome. Similar to Inglourious Basterds, it's a movie about a bunch of different people whose storylines all come to a head in an epic finale that is Quentin Tarantino's version of how history should have been. Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt are both excellent in this movie. I loved their chemistry. I loved their bromance. Brad Pitt in particular gives the best performance I've seen from him in quite a while. I love the story behind their friendship. I love seeing Leonardo DiCaprio striving to be a relevant actor again. It has great dialogue. It has a lot more humor than you'd expect in a lot of Tarantino movies. This movie is a great comedy. And the ending of this movie is just, oh my gosh, it's just amazing. It's everything you could ever ask for in a Tarantino movie, and when you watch it and you understand the story behind it, it just makes you go, oh, why couldn't history really have been like that? Is it very different from a lot of Tarantino movies? Yes, it is. Will that turn off some fans? Yes, it will. Not me, though. I absolutely loved this movie. Number 5 was a movie I saw early on in the year, and I thought to myself, that's probably going to be the surprise of the year. And now the year is over, I can still say Fighting With My Family was exactly that. I love the fact that it made me get so behind this very weird, kind of crazy family that is so obsessed with wrestling. The humor in this movie is great, and not necessarily from the jokes it's setting up, because it's really not setting up very many jokes. It's just the dialogue in this movie, hearing how this family talks to each other, hearing how the characters communicate. It felt real, it felt authentic, and it made me laugh. Florence Pugh was one of the breakout stars of the whole year, and for me, this was the movie that really broke her out. She was amazing in this movie as Paige. I love seeing her journey to try and become a professional wrestler. I loved seeing the relationship between her and her brother. I love seeing the story in this movie on what it means to chase your dreams, how you pick yourself up when life denies you your dreams. And in the end, it gave me such an appreciation for the WWE as a sport, which is a sport I have mocked and laughed at for most of my life. And that's what I'll say right now. You do not have to be a wrestling fan to really enjoy Fighting With My Family. I really feel this could be a movie for everybody. At number 4, Ford versus Ferrari. I'm not really a car person or a racing person, but just like Fighting With My Family, you don't need to be to enjoy the hell out of this movie. Christian Bale and Matt Damon both kill it in this movie. Christian Bale, once again, per usual, Oscar worthy in this movie. I love seeing this journey of these two guys who are set to take on this impossible task of building a Ford race car that's gonna beat Ferrari, which at the time, people felt was literally absolutely completely impossible. Like, no chance in hell that could happen. I just love seeing that journey when someone tells you you cannot do it, it's impossible, it's never gonna happen, and seeing the journey of them trying to pull that off. The journey of them getting to the race just has you hooked the entire time, and the race itself at the very end. It's one of the best racing scenes I think I've ever seen in a movie. This movie is also one of the most well-shot, masterfully crafted movies of the whole year. I mean, just watching the racing scenes, seeing moments between the characters, I'm just like, this movie just looks awesome. It's a movie based off a great true story that I am so appreciative that we got, because it just makes me more appreciative of what we have accomplished as a society. Number 3 was a movie that I was really pulling for, I was really hoping would be awesome, and it was Knives Out. Knives Out is a murder mystery unlike any I think we've really experienced before. Rian Johnson tells this story in a very unique way, and he takes this movie in a very unique direction, as he does with a lot of his movies. At one point, you feel like you have the movie completely figured out, and you're thinking to yourself, alright, well, where exactly does the movie go from here? But that's kind of the best part of it. The mystery in this movie is not as much the mystery itself, but it's where is the movie exactly going to go, and that's what keeps you so sucked in on this ride. The cast in this movie, everyone did great, everyone looked like they were having fun. The movie just has you in on this investigation with Daniel Craig the whole time, and you're asking yourself, okay, what did that mean there? What did this character do there? What could this mean? And by the end of this movie, when it all just comes together, it has you recalling things that you didn't really maybe think about before, you kind of felt were unnecessary before, and then you realize it was all perfectly necessary for this story. It's one of the most well-written movies of the year, and it was one of the best mysteries I've seen in probably ever. Alright, so I say this all the time. Usually the top 2, sometimes 3 movies are what I flip-flop back and forth in between and deciding what was the best of the year, what was my favorite of the year. And this year, Safe to say this was probably the hardest decision I've ever had to make in deciding which of these movies should be 1 and 2. They're both part of arguably my favorite film genre. They were both probably the 2 best experiences I had in the movies this year. They were both movies that I was supremely excited for, and they both slaughtered the expectations that I had. If I could have tied these movies for number 1, I seriously would have, but I just can't do that because that's cheating. I'm not going to take the easy way out, so I gotta put them in an order, so here it is. My number 2 movie of 2019 is Joker. Joker is one of the most original comic book movie adaptations we've ever gotten, but more so in the fact that it's not really a comic book movie. It is because it deals with the comic book character the Joker, but it's not really like that. This is a movie that takes a very deep, dark look into depression, mental illness, how society views all of that. And what you're ultimately seeing is the downward spiral of a man with mental illness and just seeing him slip slowly into madness. This movie's a very dark, sometimes discomforting movie to watch, and it's genius. In a year filled with some of the best performances I have seen in a very long time, Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker gave the best performance of the whole year. If he's not up for an Oscar, I'm actually gonna be really fucking pissed off. I just love seeing the story of this guy who has such a dark illness inside him and seeing how he just slowly descends into becoming this murdering psychopath. Seeing the way society beats him down, seeing the way his illness really does affect him. I loved seeing the Easter eggs that it did have into the DC universe and the Batman universe, but how it never strayed away from what the purpose of the movie was. This is a movie that you cannot stop thinking about the second you walk out of seeing it for the first time. The whole time you're wondering how much of that was real, how much of this happened in the movie. This is a movie that really truly affects you as a person. It reflects how you view other people, how you view society, and that's amazing. And Hollywood, stop being so afraid to make R-rated comic book movies. Clearly we will go see them. You don't need to worry about that. Stop being afraid. And here we are, my number 1 movie of the year. You guys know what it is. You guys will say I'm predictable. You guys will say this, but you know what? As always, I need to stay true to who I am. And that's why my number 1 movie of 2019, it was Avengers Endgame. I cannot emphasize enough how much I loved this movie and how much this movie really meant to me as just a movie fan and a Marvel fan. I've been obsessed with superheroes since I was a really little kid. I have been involved with this MCU franchise since it began 11 years ago with Iron Man. I love everything about Marvel. My friends and I, we talk about Marvel all the time. We theorize about Marvel all the time. We watch Marvel movies all the time. We got to see Avengers Endgame on opening night in IMAX in a movie theater packed with so many other Marvel fans. And I can honestly say it's probably the greatest movie theater experience I've ever had in my life. And I saw the movie a few more times in theaters again after that night. I've watched it a bunch more times since I got it on Blu-ray. And I just love this movie more and more every single time I watch it. The core 6 Avengers that are in this movie, they all give probably the best performances of their respective heroes since this franchise began. I love seeing where all these characters are at from the events that happened at the end of Infinity War. I love seeing them trying to get back on their feet, trying to see if there is a way to undo what was done. I love seeing the journey that the characters ultimately go on throughout this movie. I love seeing how this movie was able to tie up a lot of the loose ends that were in the MCU. The final act in this movie is just, oh my gosh, I get chills and goosebumps from just thinking about it. As a comic book fan, as a movie fan, it is literally everything you could ever ask for. This movie just stabs a spike into my heart. This movie made me cry. I don't cry to movies. I never cry to superhero movies. By the end of this movie, I was in tears. And the way this movie just wraps up the story, wraps up the characters, it couldn't have been done better. Walking out of this movie, you feel so fulfilled, so much so that I'm just like, I don't need to see another Marvel movie again in my life because this just wrapped everything up perfectly. I mean, obviously we will get Marvel movies in the future, but really, I don't care if they suck or not because this movie gave us the most perfect conclusion to an unbelievable franchise, especially when you watch it back to back with Infinity War. Then you really gain an appreciation for it. I love watching this movie. I love talking about this movie. This movie, when I walked out of the theater, I felt some type of way. It's for all those reasons. Avengers Endgame is absolutely my #1 movie of 2019. I love this movie so much. I'm so happy it ended up being everything I wanted and more. And it was the perfect conclusion to such a great franchise. There it is, guys. That is my list for the top 10 best movies of 2019. Now it's over to you guys. Don't forget to leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts on my list. But more importantly, let me know what were your top 10 favorite movies of 2019. Or what were your favorites in general. Whether you can't name 10 or you can't whittle it down to 10. No wrong answer here. And also, I'll be out of town over this weekend. But stay in tune within the next few days when I get you my list for the top 10 worst movies of 2019. That list is gonna be fun, let me tell you that right now. But for now, that's all I gotta say. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for a great 2019. Thank you for continuing to watch my videos and stand by my channel. You guys are awesome. I love you. You're the best. And I will see you all next time.